Hello and welcome to the I Am Woman project, where every week we have deep, thought-provoking and interesting conversations with thought leaders, change instigators, rule breakers and creative minds who think differently, sparking creativity and inspiration. Our special guests on our show cover a variety of topics just for you, and they share their personal stories to inspire, motivate and empower you, our listener. The I Am Woman podcast is produced for your enjoyment, and show notes are found at www.catherineplano.com. Come back often and feel free to add the podcast to your favorite RSS feed or iTunes. All links are in the show notes. Now let's get into the show. Today we have the inspirational Muffy Churches, who is an executive coach, keynote speaker, and leadership specialist. She is also the author of Coach Yourself, a 7-step guide to personal fulfillment, and she is also the director of Beyond Focal Point. Muffy's fascination is with the power behind our mindset, the notion that what we think is what we experience. She knows firsthand how our default thought patterns affect our personal and professional performance, and how important it is for us to move from self-limiting negative thoughts to ones that are positive. With an initial career as a professional dancer and with a master's thesis from UCLA titled The Psychology of Performance, her world has been immersed in an attraction to explore the ingredients of a great performance and what it is that allows us to function at our peak with family, friends, or at work, as opposed to being hobbled by any variety of mental barriers that reduce our effectiveness. Essentially, what new thinking will allow us to maximize our potential and lead the confident, self-fulfilling life that we envision. It's time to tune into that one fun, inspirational woman, Muffy. Enjoy. Today we have a very special guest for you. We have Muffy Churches. Welcome to I Am Woman Project.
Hi, Catherine. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. I've got this big smile on my face. For our listeners, Muffy and I were having a bit of a chat before we got on the show, and we were just discussing how very similar we are. So it's going to be a lot of fun, I think.
I think so too. I can't wait.
Yeah. So Muffy, for our listeners, let's unpack Muffy and let's hear your story. What's your story?
Well, let's see. Let me just think. If I kind of take us back to university years, when I was young, I loved to dance. And so the early little Muffy was a little ballerina and ended up getting my university degrees in it. I've got a degree of a master's in performing arts from UCLA, and it was an awesome experience. We had some incredible professional dancers who were there as master coaches and teachers. It was amazing. And I actually just took it from there professionally. So I ended up doing some television, some NBC work. I ended up in Las Vegas, of all places, working for MGM and Siegfried and Roy and a lot of the big shows up there. And I ended up dancing until I was in my mid-30s. I just adored it. It was like a magical life. And then at one stage, I had two young boys. I think they were 4 and 7. And my husband at the time was Australian. So we ended up moving down to Sydney and put the boys in school. I got a little bit edgy for something to do because, as a dancer, mid-30s, you're retired. That's pretty much it unless you want to teach. And so I kind of scratched my head and I started a little bit of a business, like a lingerie manufacturing business. And that went for about 1.5 years, and it was really fun. It fit into, the times that the kids were at school, and it allowed me to be a mom and have a little professional little business at the same time. It was magical. And then sort of a long story, but that morphed into corporate training. Funny kind of a morph, I know, but ended up in corporate training, and worked for probably, oh goodness, I think 12 or 13, 14 years with a large global training company. And, I would consult and sell training. I develop the training programs, all soft skills stuff. And then I would deliver the programs. We were global, so I was flying around doing all this stuff. And in the middle of all of this, I started coaching some of the senior leaders so that they would better understand how to help maintain some of the information that their staff had been trained up with. Ended up getting a diploma in coaching from Sydney Unit, and ended up getting a counseling degree as well, because I was enjoying that one-on-one interaction so much. And as you know, with coaching, you tip over. It's not just, you move away from the professional topics and you're always tipping over into really personal, sort of deeper material, really. And so I got the counseling diploma just to make sure that I was in the right space, doing the right thing. And at some stage about 5 or 6 years ago, I decided to pull away from the comfort of the corporate world and just open my own company. And only just so that I could make personal choices all the time in terms of what the jobs that I accepted, because I wanted a really major focus on the executive coaching and some of the leadership workshops that I love to run. So I've been doing that since about 2011, I think. And in the process, about a year ago, I ended up writing a book called Coach Yourself. And that's probably a separate topic, but I wrote it as an outgrowth of loving the coaching so much on a one-on-one basis, with someone, just that fulfilling sensation of being able to watch them develop and change and transform in just the way that they've always wanted to, that I thought, I want this to be scalable. I want this to be available to lots of people at one time. So I just set upon the project of, sort of putting together a book that laid out a process for, if you want to coach yourself, if you want to make change happen, here's a 7-step process to follow to do that. So I wrote that book, and so bringing you up to date now, I'm sort of, in the process of launching it and doing a lot of fun media work because of it. And it's sort of introduced me to a lot of radio and some television, and just commenting on various topics that have to do with mindset, which is my big thing. And I know, Catherine, it's your big thing as well. And so here I am, and I'm lucky enough to be chatting with you and your audience, and I'm a lucky girl.
Wow, there's so many things. So first of all, there was the dance piece, which I also love to dance. I used to go to Tony Barticchio many moons ago, and it's the same thing, that you go dancing all these years. Then all of a sudden you go to school and you realize like everyone's like 18 and you're like in your 30s. All of a sudden things change. But I think I still love dancing today. I don't do it enough, but I just think it's one of those things that I don't think there should be an age. I think if you enjoy dancing, you just dance until, however old you are. I think that was one of the things. But I related to what you were saying because it happened to me as well.
And interesting.
And I love when you went from lingerie to corporate, that was a massive transition. Transition.
Yeah, that was a biggie. I mean, it's kind of a funny story. I mean, if we may as well chat about it, because I think if any of your listeners are, because I know a lot of us as women, we have our children, and sometimes even if we've had a career beforehand, there's that making that step from being a mom to getting back into a job. And I don't know, we're different people. We sometimes lose a level of confidence about, can I really go back to work? And I don't want it to be what it was, but what can I do? And so I'll share what happened to me. So I'm here in Sydney. The kids are in school, as I was saying to you. And I was trying my best to be a mom, doing the luncheons and playing bridge, just doing things that were fun. But for me, I was getting a little bit edgy. And I was sitting at a luncheon. There was a lovely lady sitting across the table from me, and I was just making conversation. I said, "So, tell me about you. What do you do with your day, and what's going on?" And she said, "Well, I have never been happier in my life. She said, you may laugh. I am baking bread and loving it. She said, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I get into the kitchen. I create these beautiful loaves of bread. Now, this goes way back. This is about 25, maybe 30 years ago, before we could go in and buy Kalamata olive bread, right? So she was one of the first ones to be doing this. And she talked about how she tied it up with bows. And anyway, she sold it to the Queen Street delis. And she said, it's not about money. It's about loving what I'm doing and something I have a passion for. I've never been happier. And my comment to her was, oh my God, that's exactly what I need. I want something like that for myself right now. And the woman sitting next to me said, we had been chatting, by the way, over lunch about my time in Las Vegas and the costumes and the big stages and the experience of the dressing rooms and things. And so she said to me, you know, Muffy, I just read a book about starting up, being an entrepreneur and starting up your own business. And one of the things I remember reading was, you can do anything you want to as long as you've got a passion for it and you know a little bit about it. So she said, what do you have a passion for? What do you know a lot about? And just kidding. Seriously, I was just joking with her because of our conversation. I said, I know G-strings because we've been talking about underwear that was suitable for underneath all these giant costumes that you wear that weigh a ton. But if you're a swing dancer, which I was at one stage, you have to take someone else's role on stage every night. So you wear their costumes. And we needed these special little gorgeous G-strings that were adjustable to hip height and width and stuff. And the dressers backstage used to make these for us so that we could come in, buy one for $1 and, you know, buy as many a week as we wanted to. So I was joking about, well, I know G-strings, and we started laughing together. But then I walked away from that lunch and I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I went to David Jones. I went to Myers, which was Grace Brothers then, I think. And you know what? I couldn't find any. They just we weren't pumping them out back then. So I thought, well, that's it. I have found a need and a little niche in the market. I'm going to go for it. So I think it took me about 3 months, to be honest, but I designed these gorgeous little G-strings. And they were really frilly and they had big bows on them. We could not wear them under the clothes that we wear. You know, we wear gorgeous sort of tight nylon-y things now, but they were sort of like Saturday night G-string for under your jeans kind of thing. So I went to the Sydney sock shop and I went in really shyly, and I just thought it'd be really fun if I could sell 2 or 3. And she asked me how fast I could make them. So we started this crazy business, and it went really well. And so somewhere along the line, it was also kind of hard work, you know, but that's fine when you love what you're doing. And somewhere along the line, about 2 years down the track, just at the time where I was questioning, because they had come to me, the sock shop came to me and they said, look, we really like the G-strings, but we'd like you to create more stuff now. We want to offer you a full line, bras and matching panties, maybe even G-strings for men, you know, gift sets. And I wasn't trained as a designer. I was lucky to have pumped out that one design for the G-string. And so this was a beautiful offer, but I was really a bit nervous about where do I take this now? And in the meantime, a girlfriend called me up and she was talking about having to give a sort of a presentation to a group of HR directors down in the city on the topic of managing complaints. And, she said, I don't know anything about complaints. I don't know what I'm going to do. I said, well, interview me. I know everything there is about complaints. And not so much about the G-strings, but I had a year in between. Truly, they were one size fits all. I was surprised I never had any complaints. But I had a job with a plastics company just after I graduated from uni, before I went and was working as a professional dancer. And believe it or not, I was an escalated complaints manager for this plastic. The funniest thing. But anyway, it paid off because she said, well, no, I'm not going to interview you. You give the speech. So I stupidly or bravely or whatever we can call it said, okay. And I gave this presentation, and I had people coming up and sort of saying, that's really fresh material. Could you come run a workshop for us? And my next question was, what's a workshop? Anyway, so that's how all of that started. And I realized that if I could work in the corporate space, I could create workshops and repeat them. And it was sort of like I was ready to move on from cutting the lace and the fabric and this just seemed like the next exciting step. So that's where it all started.
What a fabulous story. I just love it. Absolutely love it. And I'm sitting here with a big smirk on my face because it's just, sometimes these things happen. You just go with the flow in life and you're at the right place at the right time and you're doing the thing that you're meant to be doing, obviously.
I think that's probably right. We just transition, don't we? We just trust ourselves, I think, to morph. Yeah.
Yeah, so true. And I think the other thing that you brought up, which is something I did want to talk about, there is a big difference between counseling and coaching. Yeah. How do you go between, do you find that sometimes in your sessions you go from one to the other, or you're very clear about this is counseling and this is coaching, and you separate the two in a session?
I don't separate it all, Catherine. I have to say, I feel like all the skills that I know from coaching, all the skills from counseling, all the skills that are just, mindset magic that I have read over the years and stuff that I love and think about, it's like I've got them all in one big bag and I literally just spontaneously pull something out in the moment when it seems appropriate, and I kind of trust myself to go there. And I remember someone asked me one day, they said, "Can you tell me what model do you use?" And I was lost for an answer because I thought, well, I don't rely on just one model. I've got kind of 1,000, or I make them up or whatever. And then someone else came up to me and she had started in, I think it was out of London. They're called the integrative coach. They call themselves integrative coach therapists, I think. And that's exactly what they're describing. They're saying we're an integration of lots of different sort of disciplines, and that's the term that they'd use for themselves. So I guess I could use that term. That's what I do. I integrate lots of different things. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's also very important. It really depends on, you just got to be present with your coachee, and depending on where this takes you, you've just got to, just go with it and use whatever comes to mind at that time.
That's right. Yeah.
And the other thing you were talking about is your book. Of course, I'm going to deep dive into this self-coaching. And so I know that you and I both very much into mindset. And for me, the curiosity that I have right now is, how do you do self-coaching when you have these unconscious beliefs that you're not even aware of, that sometimes it takes someone externally to shine that light on that blind spot and says, hey, do you realize you said blah, 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 blah?
Yeah. That is the big quandary. And that was what stopped me for months starting to write the book. I had the book in my mind. I knew I wanted to write it, but I was trying to work out. And you and I both know how important it is to be present with someone face to face for those reasons. And that intuitive glance, or that the energetic, something that you pick up that allows you to work from. And I thought, here I am kind of trusting that people will be able to do this for themselves. So what actually happened was I started to, I'm just going to turn this off so we don't hear any more ringing bells if you heard that.
No.
Did you hear a little?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, good.
No.
Okay, good. All right. So what I did in the end, Catherine, is, as opposed to just writing chapters, I ended up turning the book into a workbook. So I sort of thought, if I were sitting with this person coaching them, what are the sorts of questions I would ask them so that they could ponder those deeper, darker places within themselves? How can I take them to that place as best as possible to help them, turn over that leaf or that stone inside that they don't want to turn over, but they might think about it because they're sort of, there's a question right there on the page. And they're safe in their own space, in their own world. They don't have to write it down. Nobody has to see it. And if they're willing to be open and honest with themselves, then they come up with some fairly good answers. So I think, I can't say that we can replace the present real life person. And I certainly wouldn't want to be replaced, because I love the coaching itself, the action of it, the activity of it. But I think we can help people start to question their mindset. They can start to ask themselves questions such as, what thinking is working for me and making me comfortable and helping me do the things that I want to do? And what are the thoughts that I have that seem to be programmed into my head that are actually limiting me what are they? What do I believe about myself that's not helping me? So just by asking those questions on the page, that allows them then to sort of deep dive and consider as much as they possibly can without being challenged by an outside person, which is better, but they'll go as far as they're willing to go. It allows them to do that.
I love that, and I think that it's like journaling. I always say if you ask your mind or ask yourself the right question, an insightful question, your mind will always give you an answer, even if it's not straight away, but it might be a day or 2 days later, whether it comes in conversation or. So I do love that, but I was just curious because it's been one of those conversations that quite often comes up with self-coaching. So one of the things that I've done as well is just done this online coaching program, but you do it on your own, and it's similar to what you're talking about. But I guess that the difference is it's absolutely you're unpacking your mindset, unpacking what's in there, and that's the way I see it. So I do love that. I was just curious as to how it works for you and how you've put it together so that people keep moving forward with this 7-step coaching book that you've put out, which I'm curious, coach yourself, what are the 7 steps? If you could talk us through the high level 7 steps.
Sure. Yeah. So it's a process that, essentially we would follow a similar process as coaches in terms of the way we would work through a coaching session. But essentially the first thing to do is to have a look at our current reality. So it's, where am I right now? What's working for me, what's not working. And essentially it's that first step is taking us kind of scanning our world to find out, what is it that I would like to be different? Yeah. And then once you can nail that down, and so in the book, for instance, I would ask a zillion questions and a zillion categories. Is it relationship? Is it work? Is it, pick one for now and sort of deep dive and kind of just scan your emotions. Which one feels a little bit uncomfortable? Why do you think it feels uncomfortable? What relationship in that space might be uncomfortable, or what's the circumstance? So just get them to focus in on that. Then step 2 is about envisioning what they want. So if this is what I want to be different, well, what do I want it to really look like? What would the ideal be? Yeah. So it's getting really clear. So they're envisioning sort of exercises and meditations in there, just so that each individual can go to that place of the ideal, because we can't change efficiently, as you know, without knowing what we're working toward. So that's a second step. The third step is about examining barriers. So what's holding me back? What has been holding me back from being this ideal or making this change in the past? And so it's about searching for the mindset, limiting mindsets and programming that we were talking about earlier that actually stop us or limit us from moving forward and doing the things that we want to do. And it's examining those thoughts such as, I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough, or I'm not deserving, all the self-esteem stuff that we grow up with sometimes that gets in our way. So it's identifying those barriers, because before we can move forward, we've actually got to knock those down in some way. We've got to replace them with some really effective, productive, positive thinking. Then the fourth step is about looking for options. So now that I know what I want to change, now that I know what my ideal is, now I've got an idea as to how I need to shift my thinking to make it happen. What can I sort of entertain as some new stuff to be and do and think and act on, right? So it's kind of a creative step where it's about pondering and collecting lots of options. And then the next step, the fifth step, is about kind of creating a really nice, clear-cut strategy for change. So, okay, now I know what I want to do. Let me work out how I'm going to do it, when I'm going to do it, what it's going to look like. How can I break my goal down into tiny steps? Where do I start? Where do I finish? Here's my strategy, and I'll start moving toward it. So that's step 5, is actually creating that strategy and starting to actually behave and think in this new way. So there's lots of experimentation about getting out in the world and being this different us, Then the sixth step is more about celebration. It's a reminder that once you've been out there acting differently, behaving differently, thinking differently, we need to appreciate what we've done, what we've achieved. We need to look back on it and even just flick back through the workbook pages if they want to and think about where they started and how far they've come and ponder the difference in their life. Has this effort that I've made been worth it? Can I see that there's been real value in making this, and am I actually working toward exactly what I wanted to work toward, and is it starting to happen, So am I thrilled about this, and am I ready to start something new and different? So at the very last step, which is step 7, is called maintenance, and that's sort of offering like a little booklet of tips as to what to do to help ourselves maintain those shifts and changes that we've worked on for ourselves, things to look out for, even things, in terms of perseverance and slipbacks, being ready and accepting of slipbacks because they're normal and natural, and how to cope with them. Just know it's part of the deal. What are some of the other things to look out for? It's maybe the old programming popping back in, but that's okay. Settle it down and start fresh. So it's about how to hold on to what you've achieved. And then a suggestion that when you're ready, you can start with the next issue. Because for me, it's constant. This beautiful evolution of the soul and the self, it's like a project for me. And I enjoy it so much that I kind of work on one thing and then I start on another. It does seem to be an endless pool of available topics for me. So
yeah, and for everybody. Yeah, I love it. I love this, and I love the word ponder and pondering. It's really, just takes you away, doesn't it? It's almost like daydreaming. It's that kind of that feeling, and the maintenance part, I find it's key. And I think this is where a lot of us fall down: is how do we sustain our change and keep it going? And the only way to do that is to keep checking in with ourselves. How are we going? So we're not going back to that, maybe the old limiting belief that we've been carrying for the last 40 years or something. So I love the maintenance piece. I love the 7 steps. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Pleasure. Love it. Pleasure.
So Muffy, during your whole journey, what has been some of your greatest learnings?
Oh, wow. I have to say first, just in general, I've probably learned more from coaching others about myself. And I guess a lot of my learning comes from that because I find that there isn't anything that any of my clients have gone through or are going through that I can't relate to myself. And I think the process, and I wonder, you may feel the same, Catherine, the process that we take someone else through, we're actually shadowing their steps for us as well. So it's, they're developing, I'm developing. That's sort of the way I see it. But I think one of the major aha moments for me, if that's what we want to call it, something really big that hit me, it might have been 15 years or so ago. I just remember coming up against Mike Dooley. I don't know if that's a name that's familiar to the audience or to you, but he's an author and a speaker, and he's got this phrase where he says, "Thoughts become things, so choose the good ones." And it was all about understanding that what we think, literally our thought process, everything that's flipping through our head is actually creating our reality and our experience for us. So if I'm not happy with my experience, if I'm suffering, or I'm, angro all the time, or if I'm a glass half empty person, or if I've got some really aggravating relationships, well, the important thing for me is to know that all I need to do to feel better is shift the way I perceive these things, shift my thinking, and all will change. So that for me was probably the biggest aha. And I was able to, using that understanding, I was able to turn a lot of things around in my life that I needed to turn around. But I just hadn't quite known that I could, or, I don't know. I think most of us tend to endure an awful lot. Maybe we're sort of brought up to, well, life isn't perfect. So just you kind of, it's the hand you're dealt. You just sort of endure what you've got. But no, not at all. In fact, we're absolutely empowered to make new choices and take personal responsibility to change anything that we want to. And I think that's probably been my biggest wow.
I absolutely agree with you. And I actually resonate with what you were saying before, because I say the same thing. Every time I'm sitting in front of somebody, a coachee, for example, and I'm going through a coaching session, it's almost like there is a mirror right up in front of me.
That's
And
right.
it's that shadow coaching. And
Yeah.
I always walk away learning something from that experience, always.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
love
So,
that. Yeah, I feel
yeah.
like it's like I'm getting the benefits of coaching as well, because I feel like I'm getting coached at the same time.
I know. We're so lucky. It's an amazing profession. It really is.
Absolutely. So the other thing that we love to ask our Woman of Inspiration, Muffy, is pain points. And every business and every entrepreneur has pain points. What
Yeah.
would be some of your biggest pain points in business?
I think I try to do too much and be too much, Catherine. I wear too many hats. It's one thing if you have your own company or your own business. Yeah, you definitely are going to wear a lot of hats until you're, if you enlarge your business and you can afford to hire employees, or if you choose to have a team, that's a different thing. But I think for me, what I mean by wearing different hats is I love so much about the last 20 years of my professional experience that I haven't wanted to sort of pull any of it away from what I do. So I've got this, and I really count myself lucky, because I've had this wonderful experience of having been a trainer, a corporate trainer. So I'm familiar with a lot of soft skills topics. I've written programs for about 30 over the years, maybe more. But along with that comes the ability to run webinars, comes the coaching, comes the ability to develop an e-learning online program. So I've got all of these different things that I can do, and I have beautiful relationships with customers, and they may know me from 15 years ago, so they'll come to me with a request for something that may be something that I did for them many years ago, and I'll take it on. And I think what I'm saying to you is I've had an identity crisis. I laugh when I look back over the last 6 years when I pulled away and started my own company. I've gone through, I can't tell you how many website look and feels I've morphed through, because at first I thought I want to be available purely to the individual for coaching. And then it was more about, well, but I'm really coaching executives more than, and so then I shifted it to a more corporate look. And then pretty soon I realized I was cutting out the corporate, all the leadership training, and I needed that. So I changed the website again. So my problem has been lack of clarity and identity, and just learning along the way that it's really important to create a crisp identity. You can still do all those other things if you want to, but you've got to have people look at you and get what you do. That's it. Yeah. So confusion, I suppose, is what I'm saying.
Oh, but
Yeah.
I think that's a normal, I think we all go through that, I think we evolve, and, it could be that, I can relate to what you were saying. I mean, it's very corporate, but then I'm very also into my spirituality. So I love meditation and mindfulness, and I've merged that with the corporate stuff. And so, quite often I was doing the same thing, but at the end of the day, it was just like, it's just about being me. Just be yourself. Don't focus on what your market is. Just be who you are. And I think that changed the way that I was, because I don't know how many times I've changed my website over the years, but I think it was just finding and being comfortable in your own skin. And I think once you're comfortable in your own skin, it doesn't matter what you do, what your profession is, what your market is. You are Muffy, I am Catherine, and people will come to you because of who you are.
That makes so much sense. That's where were you 3 years ago, Catherine? Thank you. It could have helped me heaps. Yeah. No, you're so right. I think that's it. And I think that's probably, it's maybe taking me a little bit of time to kind of find that specific me and settle into it and just move forward in that. I think actually in the last couple of months that's beginning to happen. I had a big operation right in the middle of all of this about 3 years ago. And I have to say that kind of put the brakes on an awful lot of things, but it actually it actually helped me how can I put it? Sort of rebuild, I suppose, start fresh, rebuild. So even, I don't know why I mentioned this, but I think just sometimes, we never know in life when something big is going to sort of put the brakes on. And I'd say it's probably not for a bad reason. I think
No.
I had my whole back, I've got all titanium rods now.
Mm.
So the whole thing is fused. So I have very little flexibility. So it's a really big 10-hour operation. But what it did for me is it made me slow down. I think I was moving too fast, trying to do too much. And so that was a bit of a gift.
Yeah.
And so I've had a couple of years now to kind of recuperate, learn to kind of walk again because they restructure you so dramatically. You have to kind of start fresh. But it's also, I think, finding my identity in the corporate space or the private space as well. It's been a part of this, sort of transitioning into what you're calling, who am I? Who is that me that I want to be comfortable with?
Yeah. And, I always believe that something, everything happens for us. And, I didn't have a major operation like that, but I remember, it happened to me probably about 18 months ago. I had 3 hernias and a gallbladder taken out.
Oh, goodness.
So
Yeah.
no, but it was fine. But it actually did knock me, it just put me in bed. And it was interesting how, when I had the opportunity to lie in bed while I was on endo, mind you, I was lying there thinking, how did it get to this, Catherine? And really, it's because I wasn't listening to the signs. I was doing, a million things, going a million miles an hour.
Yeah.
And it's just sometimes, whatever you want to call it, the greater source, universe, whatever you want to call it, says, you know what, Catherine, you've been ignoring the signs. It's time to slow down. And sometimes that's when we go through these major shifts, mindset shifts I'm talking about, where we start looking at life. And I know that for me, it's all about life now. I mean, it's not about work. It's about life. And I actually have more of a balance now than I ever did before. But it took that to happen before I was able to go, plan my life into my work.
Well, I'd have to agree 100% because I think that's exactly where this operation took me as well. And I love the fact that I had the opportunity to do that. So, and having this conversation about, being able to identify who we are and what we're comfortable with, that whole thing has come out of, it's been a result of having to stop, slow down and rethink. Yeah. It's wonderful when it happens. It's not fun to go through on one hand, but it is a gift. It's always a gift in some way.
And I love the fact that you call it a gift as well. And you're embracing it. And I think that helps you move forward rather than going, well, that was a problem and remain stuck in that problem. I think that it's a gift, helps you move forward with it. And I think it takes a lot of courage. So good on you.
Thanks.
So the other thing that we love to ask our Woman of Inspiration as we wrap up the show is for our Woman of Inspiration pick one word that best describes her personal brand. So what would be that one word for you, Muffy?
Let me think. Ooh, just one. Okay. I would use the word energizing. Energizing, because I think that I think if I could step out of myself and look, or if I kind of hear the comments that come, when I work with clients, it's about giving them the sense of trust in themselves that they can move forward, that they can make change happen. It's sort of an inspirational sensation that, okay, I am an okay person and I do have vision for who I'd like to be. There is a way I can step into that and I can start now. So I think maybe energizing, that's the word I would pick.
I love that. Very much so. Yeah, you do have a lot of energy. And the other thing that we always love to ask our Woman of Inspiration as we wrap up the show is for you to leave our listeners with 3 shiny golden nuggets. So what would you like to leave for our listeners today?
Oh, I love that. It's such a great concept. Okay, well, I would say, first of all, no matter what your situation in life or at work, whatever it is, know that change is possible, right? So first of all, change is possible. The second nugget would be that all that requires is to take personal responsibility and start to make new choices. And lastly, probably just if we use that energizing word again in terms of your personal energy, focus on love, on smiles, on acceptance of others, and the world will just turn into a beautiful place to be. Just shifting your mindset around the way you perceive your life and the things in it has all the effects you can imagine.
I love that. I love the change. The change is possible because quite often I come across, and I don't know if it happens with you, that sometimes I come across where people actually resist change.
Yeah.
And it's almost like you have to talk them through that. The benefits of change, even if it's scary right now, it won't last, but you'll be thankful for pushing yourself and changing whatever the situation it is for you, to come out on the other side. And it's about walking through or dancing with that fear of change.
That's a lovely way to put it. I love it. It's about dancing through that fear of change. Perfect. How gorgeous. Yeah.
Love it. So Muffy, how can our listeners find you? What would be the best place?
Well, I guess the easiest place is the website, and easy because it is just my name. So it's just www.muffychurches, and that's Muffy with a Y, Muffy, Muffy Churches with an ES. Yeah, muffychurches.com. Simple as that. And there are little forms on there if you want to get in touch with me, send an email, or, I'm happy to give you a call right back. We can chat. Easy peasy. That's it. Yeah.
I love that. Easy peasy. I haven't heard that for a long time. For our listeners, I highly recommend check out Coach Yourself, the 7-step process that Muffy was kind enough to go through with us. So thank you so much, Muffy, for your time, your energy, your just your energy, just lots of fun. So thank you so much.
Catherine, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed the show, as it is my mission to reach out and inspire as many individuals like you. And one of the best ways to help us achieve this goal is by giving us a good review on iTunes. It's easy and it only takes about 10 seconds. If you have any questions or special guests that you would like to hear from, please send us an email to support@catherineplano.com.au and we will get right back to you. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook @Catherine Plano. That's it for now. Thanks for listening. Until next week, please take care.